Hello and welcome to this edition of Upfront. I'm your host, Nancy Wilmot. And I'm going to wager that many of you folks watching this today will recognize our guest. Former paramedic, former mayor of Port Alberni, currently working with P.A.S.S, the Port Alberni Shelter Society. I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. John Douglas to Upfront. John, welcome.
Well, thank you, Nancy. It's a great pleasure to be here with you again.
Now, John, you've been working with P.A.S.S, the Port Alberni Shelter Society, for several years. And I'm not sure that people know the length and breadth of what the Shelter Society is involved with, because it's much more than the shelter on 8th Avenue. So could we start with just a description, brief description, of what the Shelter Society operates and what you do in this community?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, Nancy, because it gives me a chance to try and give credit where it's really due, which is it's a large organization with a fantastic board of directors and executive director and wonderful staff. You know, we're up to a large number of employees here in the community, about 82 last time I looked. So we have a number of facilities in the community. They all center around housing and the marginalized population of society, but housing and then housing supports and all the supports people need in that sector. And unfortunately today a lot of that revolves around the opioid crisis and a lot of mental health issues, poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, and all those aspects that we're trying to deal with. But we work around that area. We operate an overdose prevention site. We operate a sobering site where people can stay for up to 24 hours and get a meal and help with items that they might need, such as clothing or more transitional or permanent housing. And we operate a large food distribution service that we, provide food 7 days a week throughout the community, not just to people in our sector or underneath our umbrella, but also to our partners in the community.
And I have your business card here, John, and your title is Special Projects Community Engagements, which is kind of a hard to understand title, but you described yourself to me earlier as the concept guy, the idea guy. Is that a fair assessment of your role in P.A.S.S?
Well, it's a fair assessment. What I do is I'm not the only one. There are, as I said, there's a great board of directors and great staff that work with us. So we all have ideas, but that's really what my, I guess my description of what I do is I deal more with concepts, and then the staff and the management help make it a reality by making sure it's sustainable financially, economically, that it'll work and it'll keep our society healthy and viable to continue.
And when you were describing everything that the Shelter Society is involved with in the town, there's so many different buildings, different projects going on. But am I correct in that they all interact in one way or another, in as much as you might have, for instance, a resident from the shelter working at the farm? Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's all very, very intricately interwoven. I'm glad you mentioned the farm, because that's one aspect I didn't mention. So we have the shelter farm, which of course does partnerships with North Island College, one of our most significant partners in the community. And we help teach people how to learn about agriculture, about how to learn about marketing, to learn what to grow that will sell, how to finance such a career. And the farming also opens up a great therapeutic aspect that a lot of the people we deal with in other parts of the sector find very beneficial. So there's a great number of people who go out and take part in the activities of the farm. And for the last couple of years, we've been working on the development of a therapeutic recovery community, and the shelter farm is actually providing us a venue in the community that works very well to promote that concept. So that's one of the latest projects I've been working on.
And I have to say that over the years in my job, I've worked with so many different nonprofits, different organizations and individuals doing so many different things in the community. And it's been astonishing how many times the thread leads back to the Shelter Society. That you're not just working as an island, you're not working alone, you're working with so many different groups in the community. You guys must be run off your feet.
Well, I don't know if there's a nonprofit in the community that we're not involved with. You know, like you say, that there's so many aspects that we work with. For example, at the farm, we have INEO, we have New Chalmette Economic Development Group there. We have all kinds of partners that we deal with, the Rotary Group, different service groups in town. And of course, we're always dealing with the city and with the local provincial MLA, our Minister of Municipal Affairs, Josie Osborne, and we're always working with our federal counterpart too, our MP, Gord Johns. So, yeah, there's a lot of partners, and it's a really wonderful aspect of this community that we're able to do that.
Now I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the therapeutic community. And that's a new concept, certainly new in the community. Not very many people had heard of it before a Globe and Mail article came out a couple of weeks ago, which I read as well. Since then, you've been on the radio and you know, helping to educate the community about a project that the shelter has actually been working on for years. What is a therapeutic community?
Well, it's a concept that is fairly new to us here in the Valley, but it's not new to the global community. And what we've been doing over the last few years is tapping into that global community to try and find out more about recovery programs that can be viable for what's occurring in our society today with substance use. So in a very brief stroke, a therapeutic community is about a number of core principles. The first one is that it's free. And that's probably extremely significant. You know, you see people going through treatment programs here and bankrupting themselves or their families, and they're short programs that generally do not work. Therapeutic communities are long-term, so that's another core element about them. So you're looking at, in some communities, 3.5 years. The one that we're developing, we're looking at 2 to 2.5 years. The other core element of it is the work involved. So the therapeutic recovery community is about working while you're in the community and establishing social enterprises that you can work in to create revenue. For example, in Italy, San Padrignano is the sort of mother of many therapeutic recovery communities. It's been operating for 43 years. They have a farm. They have, I think, something like 40 to 50 social enterprises that people work on. Mind you, they have a client base of about 1,200 clients at any one time living on the site. So they grow olives, they develop olive oil, they build olive oil-based skin products that they distribute through health stores across Europe. They also have agricultural elements such as cattle, where they'll have dairy cattle, they make cheese, they market that cheese. They have restaurants where people learn how to work in a restaurant, how to manage a restaurant. They have grapes, they grow grapes. Out of the grapes they make wine. And they market that wine, and they market that wine in their restaurants. They make leather, and they make leather products, and they make high-end leather products that they distribute through high-end fashion designers in Europe. And then there's some other smaller therapeutic recovery communities, one we interacted with in Norway, where they're quite small size of approximately 24 clients. And they'll raise chickens and sell eggs. They'll have a dog kennel, do dog grooming. So there's some very intricate social enterprises, and there's some very simple ones. So we're trying to pick out some of those. So that's the other element that's core. And that's sort of three things then. The fourth one is the peer aspect of it. So rather than the traditional Western method of relying on an academic who has spent a great deal, and I respect that time, studying addictions and substance use, it relies more on somebody who's been there before you, who's been and taken the footsteps that you're going through and have come out of. And traditionally in San Padrignano, for example, you'll be introduced to a mentor who has been through the program prior to you. And you'll be spending a great deal of time with that mentor to go through all of the issues that a person with substance use traditionally goes through. And you'll learn to work with that person and to establish goals and to attain those goals. And the last thing I'd say about it, well, not last, but one of the most significant parts as well, is the exit program that it involves, which includes, setting yourself up on, what sort of potential educational skills do you want to acquire while you're at the therapeutic recovery community, and what do you need to perhaps reestablish, such as you may have lost your driver's license. Would you like to get some simple skills for your resume, such as first aid or food safe? Where are you going to live when you leave? Are you going to relocate to a different community where you may be freer from the elements that got you involved in substance use, so you have a better chance of success? So those are the few of the things about the therapeutic recovery community.
Holy cow, John, this is drastically different than the model that is usually followed in North America. Certainly here in Port Alberni, where an individual might go through a detox and then either be referred to a publicly funded recovery center or pay for their own, as you said, out of their own pocket to go to a private recovery center, where they would generally spend 4 to 6 weeks trying to gain the tools that they need before they return to the same community, the same place where they were trying to escape from. But in the therapeutic community, you're talking about up to 2.5 years living and working in this community. That is drastically different.
Yeah, it is, absolutely is. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we'll have here, is for people to come to grips with that and to realize that it's not a quick fix. And I think that's something we all have to do, is to realize it's not a quick fix. An individual who gets caught up in a world of dependency, it takes a long time to establish, and it takes a long time to find your way out into a better world.
And you've mentioned Shelter Farm several times, and you kind of already answered this, but I think it bears repeating, because the therapeutic community isn't something that is going to be developed on 8th Avenue at the current shelter. This is something that is happening outside of Port Alberni on the farm.
Yes, although another element of the Shelter Farm, of course, is that at different times through social enterprises, those individuals or clients, as we call them, may be involved in activities in the community, such as if we establish a small restaurant or a small woodworking business, they may be interacting, which is a really good thing too. But at the moment, what we have is one building at the farm, which we've renovated into a 6-bedroom home. So we're setting that up. It'll be fully staffed 24/7 and be able to provide accommodation for 6 individuals. At this time, we're opening it up as we believe, the first exclusively female facility, a therapeutic recovery community facility in Canada. So we're just on the final stages of opening up this facility, and we're going to be developing the model as we go along. So it's going to be a work in progress.
And I think it's worth saying that P.A.S.S, the Port Alberni Shelter Society, already has a very successful social enterprise operating at Shelter Farm. I myself bought a share in the springtime, and every summer, every Saturday morning, I've been down in the farmer's market picking up a full share, which has been a bag absolutely overflowing with produce every Saturday. It's been quite amazing. Now, this is a social enterprise that is working, that is sustainable, and in many ways, to my way of thinking anyway, the therapeutic community is really just a natural extension of that.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear, Nancy. I also bought one of those shares and come home with bags overflowing with produce every week. And they've actually started a winter program too, in case you haven't heard about that. But yeah, the farm is an excellent location for a number of reasons. First of all, it's partially removed from the community, so it gives some people that little bit of a gap, a bit of a distance between elements that may have contributed to their substance use before. But the other part of the farm that really makes it wonderful is the environment out there. The setting, it's very therapeutic just in itself. It's in a nice valley, a very pastoral-like setting. And there are a great number of activities that a person could be involved out there, which we will try and build up the structure around over the coming years. So the first obvious one, of course, is getting the fields ready to grow crops and planting those crops and cultivating those crops and then harvesting and then marketing those crops. But there'll be other activities as well if we need to do a little bit of landscaping around the site. We could add on to that and perhaps develop a horticultural course so people could get into landscaping when they come out of it. There's a possibility of, we may do a little bit of road work, fence work, cattle, bees, honey, skincare products from honey. There are all kinds of things. It's really limitless as to what we choose to go on, but what we will be doing is looking at the marketing very carefully to make sure we can find something that's sustainable. And that's the other element that I didn't touch on too much, that because it is free, we have to make sure it's sustainable. And we try and do that by building those social enterprises so that we won't be as dependent on government funding or the taxpayers' money in order to make this work. And that's the model which we found in Italy that seemed to work so well. So they supported approximately 60% of the cost of the entire program was supported by those social enterprises. And then we would follow that same model and then try and raise the remainder through philanthropic donors and donations from other organizations.
Now, you've said that, at least to start off with, the therapeutic community will be for women only. It will be an all-female operation. So I want to know, where will these women come from? Who will they be? Who will refer them? Do they just come and knock on John Douglas's office door?
Well, my door is always open, for the most part. But it's going to be, like I said, a work in progress. The key elements we've seen in the other therapeutic communities is that there's a fairly rigorous interview process before coming into the facility. So we want to make sure that people are ready. So they won't be coming in off the street. They'll be expected to have made the decision that they wish to go through a life change in this way. And they'll be expected to be relatively clean of substances they've been using. For example, a lot of people go through methadone or Suboxone treatments, so they'll be expected to have been going through that. We'll be working with Vancouver Island Health Authority, and particularly with mental health, to work out an appropriate referral process and a selection process to get people into the house.
And you've said that this is based on a model that was first developed in Italy, in San Patrignano. Am I saying that right?
San Patrignano, yes.
So I want to know, how on earth did a shelter society in Port Alberni, British Columbia, Canada, number one, find out about San Patrignano, number two, learn from them how to develop a therapeutic community here? How on earth did this come about?
Well, ironically, it was through our work in housing. When I first got associated with P.A.S.S. back in 2015-16, we were working with the government at the time to try and get a new facility constructed, which we've done now, which we've got our home on 8th. And during the process of doing that, our director, Wes Hewitt, was appointed to a board called Sparks, BC. And Sparks was so impressed with the work we were doing that they gave us an award, a financial award to use for research into any direction we wanted, but we chose to follow therapeutic recovery communities. And also through those connections, our executive director, Wes Hewitt, was informed about San Patrignano. And I can distinctly remember the time he came back and said, "John, we should take a look at this San Patrignano." So we did. And we reached out to them and found out more about them. And then eventually went to San Pat and spent a week in one of their international workshops, which was attended by people from the United States, from Canada, from Norway, from Malta, from Switzerland. And ironically, when we first got there, there was a young person from Port Alberni who'd just been admitted as a client, and we met that person as well. And so it's very interesting work. And we also reached out to some facilities down in the United States and were able to attend a workshop there, which just kind of reinforced what we'd heard about San Pat. That's the brief version called San Pat. So we were really lucky that way, and that just goes to show how beneficial it is to work with other partners and to get those connections with other nonprofits, because there's a wealth of information. It's easy to miss information, but interacting with other groups and going to meetings and getting to know what they do in their other fields of work, you can find out so much more, and that's really what led us down this path.
Oh, John, this, to my way of thinking, this sounds so exciting, but I can hear the naysayers. I can hear the words ringing in my ears. This is only 6 women. What a big hoopla. What a bunch of money for 6 people.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's always naysayers, aren't there? But it's a start, and it's, there are a lot of people too who would say, well, we need to do other things. We need to change the law, for example. And there are a lot of things we need to do. But the fact is with this, what we saw, this is something we can do. And it's immediate, it's right in front of us, and it's a program we can actually institute. We don't have to wait for the government to change the law. It's not a legal matter that needs to be addressed. The other aspect too, I've found more and more with my experience, which I've learned so much over the last few years, and I still feel I have so much more to learn. But our model with substance use, we're missing some big aspects of it, but we've covered a lot too. So in the last several years, there's been a lot of good work done by a lot of really good people in the community in all the different sectors. People have been working to provide, for example, harm reduction supplies to help reduce the spread of disease, and education to help educate people about how to reduce the spread of disease. And they've done a lot of work about overdose prevention and how to reduce fatalities while people are caught up in this whirlwind of substance use. But there's a couple of elements we haven't done a lot of work. One would be prevention at the very beginning. How do we address this so that people avoid falling into that, we refer to it as the river of substance use. But the other element is how do we help people recover? And that's where we really haven't done a good job over the years. I think we've been trapped in what I call kind of a Western society mentality of instant fix. You know, if you go into your local emergency with chest pain, they can give you some nitro and dilate your arteries and you're good. For a while at least, right? It's just not like this with recovery. It's not a strict medical issue. It's a whole issue dealing with the whole person, and it takes a long time to recover. And that's what we can do right now, is start working on that. And we chose to do it for a client base of 6 because we have a house with 6 rooms. And we chose to do it for 6 women because there is no facility exclusively for 6 women in Canada. There are some for males, but not for females. And then there were some practical issues too. It just is easier on the staffing and on the living conditions if you have one gender at one point. But what we do wish to do, and we've talked about this before, is in the long run, open it up to all genders and open it up to families and, with children. San Pat has that. They have all genders. They have children, they have education, school, hospital on site. So ideally that's what we'd like to do, but we try and do what we can right now, and then we'll build towards the future.
John, I know there are plenty of people out there watching this today that are going to want to learn more, and many of them are going to want to know how they can support this project. So I've got two questions for you. Number one, where do people get more information about this? Can they just call you up? And number two, what do you need? How can the community support you?
Well, education and learning about it is one of the best things people can do. We did some forums prior to the onset of COVID, where we were able to do some public forums and get people out and talk about the issue and have dialogues around the issue. We still have some funding towards dialogue where we could put on some additional events like that, which we would love to do. The other thing is just strictly in terms of support and financial support, what we want to do with our farm is purchase the land that it sits on. We currently have a wonderful relationship with the owner with a $1 a year lease, but we would like to acquire that property, and that'll give us the leverage to move into the future and to grow so that we can embrace all genders and embrace large numbers of people out there. So, but really education, getting involved, we always are open for people who want to volunteer their services or their ideas or their skills, and it doesn't have to be just with farming, it can be with helping develop websites or, communicating in the community. It's all kinds of ways people can help. They can just go to our website, which is pashelter.org, and everything feeds out from there, and they can get a hold of me through that way.
Oh my goodness, John, this is such a large and involved topic that we could talk about this for another half hour. And I will have you back again as a guest as we talk about the progress of the therapeutic community. And I know you're going to want to do more to introduce the community to the concept, to the therapeutic community that is being created. But we are almost out of time. However, I did promise you that I would save enough time for you to give a pitch to an event that is very dear to your heart, that is happening on January 1st. And I know you are working very hard behind the scenes to try to make it happen. So, Mr. John Douglas, what is happening on January 1st in Port Alberni?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, January 1st, there's an event that these sort of crazy Canadian people do every once in a while. We had to cancel it last year. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's being resurrected on January 1st down at our beach. And it's where everybody runs into the water, and they dress up as teams, they get awards for costumes. So we're hoping to resurrect that. We're having a meeting this week and hoping that towards the tail end of COVID here, we're going to be able to resurrect that event and have a really good community crowd down there to support the work that we do at P.A.S.S. and the work that everybody in the community does by working together.
Oh, John, although I'm pretty sure most people recognize your face, not everybody is familiar with your sense of humor. And you started off by saying, oh, there's a dreadful event. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but you're just being funny, because I know that the polar bear swim, and that's what we're talking about, is something that is very near and dear to your heart.
Oh, extremely excited, Nancy. Especially excited to see you there running in. It's just going to be great.
Well, I've taken the January 1st dip before, so you're right, I probably will be there again. But in the meantime, John, it has been just such a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
And thank you at home for joining us on this edition of Upfront. Until we meet again, take care of yourself.